After that, we stayed and talked for a while, trying to work out the details of how to stay in contact with Echo, also known as the pop star Vicky Voice. After about an hour or so, she referred to a strange feeling that she had in her stomach, which Nylea informed us was the signal that the process had been completed, after which she had to go through the uncomfortable process of calling the liquid steel that I had gifted her back out, which she wasn't exactly a fan of. But, unlike me, she only had to do it the once, as I only gave her a single dose, 1 day's worth. Enough so that she could armor whatever piece of equipment that Ned managed to work up. Ned had always had a gift for technology. He may have been a comic book nerd, but when it came to mechanics, taking things apart, putting them back together, fixing electronics, he had sort of savantism for it. A natural knack. He wasn't a rocket scientist by any means, but he could definitely jerry-rig something in a rush. And given enough time and a soldering gun, he could actually make his own electronics. He often did it for amusement, like when he was in his ghost hunting phase and created an EMF device made to pick up electromagnetic frequencies and the changes in it, or having to fix his car stereo again and again and again. I swear he put that thing together so many times that it's not even really the same radio anymore. It eventually stopped breaking once he had completely reassembled it with all new parts. But as I said, by then, it wasn't even the same radio anymore. But it worked nonetheless. And he ended up spending a lot less than he would have had he just went out and bought a new one. It took him a while to do, but he managed it all the same. So at this point, he had already begun sketching, trying to work out the perfect design to add to Echo's new superhero outfit, which he had a massive number of ideas for. As she didn't have any form of protection for her physical body, we decided that the best solution would be to simply make some liquid steel thread and sew it into her new outfit, which would basically allow it to work sort of like a bulletproof vest. Highly effective, yet very light. We offered to make her a full suit of armor, but she opted for simply a helmet and a fiber suit. Her statement was that if she was going to run around being a superhero, it didn't mean she had to look like a man while she was doing it. She wanted to look cute, basically. So Ned went with a tight and sexy design. She had to correct him a few times, as in the beginning he went a bit too sexy, and that it still had to function as armor for the entirety of her body. Echo spent a deal of time trying to work with the liquid steel, going through the same process as me, as far as learning how to manipulate it. She would need to in order to properly apply it to whatever device that Ned managed to work up. Since we were no longer under the secret identity basis, we all exchanged numbers with Echo so that we could stay in contact. We decided to refer to her as Echo on a regular basis while we were together, as having two Vickies in the group made things a bit confusing. Surprisingly, Vicky actually said that we could start referring to her by her last name instead, even though she didn't really like the last name Freaks. She thought it was a bit confusing when people heard it, as it actually sounds like the word freaks, as in a freak of nature, but it's spelled differently. But Echo, or Vicky Voice, said that she was fine with simply going by Echo, as she'd have to get used to it anyways. And Vicky was there first. Despite being a pop star, she was actually pretty generous. She didn't seem to have any sort of ego about it either. I mean, I had heard she was nice from people who had had interviews with her, but surprisingly, in person, she definitely fit the bill, being very friendly. But eventually, time came for her to get on her way. Vicky went out and picked her up a bit of a disguise, a hat and some sunglasses, so that she could leave the apartment without making a scene. And eventually, everybody else did the same, returning to their respective homes to get back to work. Vicky said that she had work to do back at the magic shop, and Ned, of course, had to get to work on Echo's new outfit and the designs for her noise device, which was going to take some time in research and development, as Ned referred to it. So, at long last, I crawled my way into bed, laying down and staring at the ceiling as I got ready to close my eyes for another night. Still a bit sore from my fight with the behemoth. I hope the rest of them are a bit easier to deal with, I thought to myself, as a question popped into my head. Hey, Nylea. Yes, Keven, Nylea replied, as I laid there staring at the ceiling, furrowing my brow a bit as I tried to concentrate my thoughts. Tell me, King's blood, what exactly is it? I mean, you say it's this rare thing that people barely ever have, but, I mean, really, what is it? It doesn't make sense if it's genetic, especially considering that you come from another planet with a completely different race. It doesn't make sense that human beings would have it too. Well, I'm uncertain of whether you would understand the complicated nature of it, but I'll try to explain the best I can. King's blood is a very rare genetic set of circumstances. It is referred to King's blood, referred to as King's blood, but in essence, it is simply the genetic culmination that leads to evolutionary advance. What? I replied, scratching my head a bit. What does that even mean? Basically, King's blood can be possessed by any living organism, so long as they have a genetic code, which all living organisms do. Eventually, regardless of what your race is, your genetics will eventually align to create what you might call a bridge from which new genetic information can form, a stepping stone for evolution, in which a species can take on new traits or characteristics based on the needs of their environment, allowing them to adapt and change, become stronger or faster, more resilient, more survivable. King's blood is not particular to any species. It exists within all life within the universe. So long as your species exists, some individuals within it will always possess the traits that we refer to as King's blood. So, why is it that you're curious, Keven? Nylea asked, with a bit of curiosity in her own voice. Well, to be honest, I know I have other things on my plate, but I'm still worried about the whole situation with you and your hatchling. I don't want to just throw you out to the world and hope you can find someone. It would be better if I could find someone. I told you, Keven, those are long odds. Yeah, I know, that's what you said. Which is why I was asking what exactly King's blood was. Because in truth, the real question behind that question is whether or not it can be transmitted genetically from parent to child. Is it something that you can inherit? Well, truthfully, King's blood comes in many variations. Most are what you would refer to as recessive, meaning the information for it, or the unique combination, is stored within the DNA, but it is not primary or a forefront in the DNA. In this form, King's blood is basically useless. It does not have the necessary placement within your genetic structure to effectively be King's blood. There are many people who are carriers for King's blood. This is how we refer to those who possess the dormant genes for it, but do not possess it themselves. they are carriers. And to answer your question, it is possible for king's blood to be transferred from parent to child, and for it to remain as a dominant gene for several generations before going into recession. So yes, it is possible. But why do you ask? Well, because if I have it, and king's blood is passed down genetically, or at least can be, then it's also possible that one of my parents possesses it. Keven, you're not considering... You're damn right I'm considering it, I replied, interrupting Nylea. I have no intention of throwing you to the wind. The only real question is, if one of my parents does have it, which one? I understand that it's only a possibility, but it would be selfish of me not to consider it. Honestly, the best outcome is if my father were the one who has it. I would have to reveal the fact that I'm the heavy metal knight, and you. But frankly, I think my father would be the most accepting of the situation. My mother's a bit of a worrywart. She would probably think it was simply too dangerous. Heck, she'd probably just tell me to send you on your way, you and your hatchling. Too concerned for my safety to see anything else. But my father, he's a different story. Honestly, I could see him being proud of me for acting as the heavy metal knight, for trying to help people. And if I told him what was going on, I really believe that he would want to help however he could. I wanted to keep him out of this in order to make sure that they stay safe. The less they know, the less likely they are to take risks, try to get involved if things go bad. But if my father has the king's blood too, then he could become your new host, and then he'd be able to protect himself just fine. The only question is, does he have it? I'm hoping that there's some way that I can test it or check, or that maybe you can check without him noticing. I'm sorry, Keven, but the only way to distinguish if he has king's blood without ample technology at our disposal is for me to actually attempt to inhabit him, which I'm afraid to tell you would be very noticeable. As you can well remember, it's not something that will slip your attention. Yeah, you can say that again. There's no way we're slipping that by him. Which means there's only one choice. I have to tell him. I can only hope that it's gonna go well. But if it does, then I can save you. Make sure that you're okay. Even if you're not with me anymore. If there's one person on this planet that I'd trust to have your back, to make sure that you're safe, it would be my dad. There isn't a more trustworthy guy on the face of the planet.